Hello there folks, Elita Legionarii here, and today I am bringing you a 3 versus 3 31k for Rome Total War. This is an interesting battle because in this battle I took command of the Seleucid Empire. I don't tend to use the Seleucids very often because they are on the rather tricky, more difficult end to use in 31k, but I do like to use them. They are a fun faction. I like the challenge of the Seleucids, and thus this was a nice battle to test them out in just because it was good fun. Good strong allies to go with in this battle, so I was more of in a sort of gambling mood on the factions I chose to use. So I'm in command of the Seleucid Empire. My army consists of 6 Silver Shield Legionaries. The Legionnaires, I'm using them as my main infantry force. This time, ordinarily I would probably recommend more pikemen than Silver Shield Legionnaires. However, when I play as the Seleucids, and it's my opinion when you play as the Seleucids, that they're not a frontline infantry action in 31k, they are a support faction for your allies. They can play in some stalling roles, they can play support, backup. Their infantry is not mainline, you don't want to use it as a mainline infantry. So what I really want out of these Silver Shield Legionnaires is their testudo, because testudo is very useful for stalling actions, slowing enemy opponents down, getting in their way, blocking them, sort of zoning off areas of the battlefield, and thus it's basically what I want them for. I've also got 4 units, and this is an unusual thing to do with the Seleucids. I've got 4 units of absolutely maxed out archers. Now, Seleucid archers are only the lower quality archers and are not particularly good. However, I am not using them to face other archers, which Rome might bring, or anything like that. That's not what I want my archers for. I want my archers to work as either archer bait for other people, so that Mo here, who's playing as Macedon, Titan's Mohammed, who's playing as Macedon, he'll be able to use his Cretan archers and he'll be able to shoot them while I'm also shooting with my archers just to add the extra numbers, and these archers will act as bait so as these Cretans don't take the damage because they're more useful. Or the secondary purpose of bringing archers with the Seleucids is to use them for fire arrows, so you have a morale penalty against your opponent, so that when you come in with your cataphracts you get a more devastating impact, basically because the enemy morale is lowered by these fire arrows here from the archers. Then I've also got 4 Silver Shield Pikemen, mostly for the idea of either intermingling with a Roman ally, just to kind of support him so he doesn't get cav charged, to block out any of the German player over here's units if possible. However, that's not very good because the Seleucids are actually not very good at dealing with Germania, even though they've got pikes, and yes, their pikes do well against Germania if they get them on the front, but because of the lower morale of Seleucid infantry units, they tend to be macerated fairly easy by the shock effects of Germania, so they're not really very good against Germania. It doesn't mean they can't work, but they're not ideal. You're much better to go with, say, Greece or Carthage, and even Macedon to a bit more of an extent. But so yeah, this is my army. Of course, the main part of my army with any killing power is the cataphracts, and I'm hoping to use those against Germania for their 9 charge and their mass impact. So that's my army. My allies, of course, are, as I said, Titan's Mohammed. Mo is bringing Macedon, like I said. He's got 3 units of Cretan archers, 5 units of companion cavalry, and the rest are royal pikemen, so a total of 8 royal pikemen. And then on the left we have Titan's Hades. Hades is bringing, I believe, 6 Praetorian Cav and 14 Urban, so standard build there, the Scipii Romans. And our opponents are Odin. This is back when Odin was Brotherhood. Of course, now he's TNG with the rest of the Irish guys. He is 6 Praetorian Cav and I believe probably 14 Urbans as well. Then we have Thor. Again, Thor is, at this point in time, he was clanless, which is saying something because Thor has been just about all the clans out there and made a few of his own. Of course, he is now in TNG with Odin and Indy. He's got 6 Praetorians, 1 Legionary first, and 13 Urbans. And then, as I said, we had a Germania player. This is Heaven's Cornovii. Cornovii has got, I believe, 3 Berserkers, 4 Gothic Cavalry. I believe it is about 6 or 7 Chosen Axemen, a couple of Naked Fanatics, interestingly enough, and some Knight Raiders. I think he's just... The Naked Fanatics are interesting. I don't believe they have a scare effect. I can't recall they might actually. I haven't used them for such a long time, but they do have Warcry. So that is the Germania army. So It's an interesting move that he's taken Germania when faced with Macedon and the Seleucids. Now, that's not to say that can't work, because Macedon and Seleucid morale isn't excessively high. In fact, some people are of the opinion that Macedon's morale is higher than the Seleucids. In fact, it actually isn't. What makes Macedon more resilient is because they've got bigger shields. So they can... that shield kind of blocks some of the damage they receive, and it helps their morale in a sense that it allows them to take less damage, and their morale holds out a little longer because they've taken less damage. But in theory, if they had the same shields and armour and everything, the Seleucids and Macedon would actually have the same level of morale. But it's just that Macedon with the bigger shield on the pikes is more useful. It's unfortunate. I really wish the Silver Shield Pikemen did have the same kind of shield. I wish the Silver Shield Pikemen were on the same level as Royal Pikemen. It makes sense to my way of thinking, at least historically speaking, because the Silver Shields, or if you want the actual Greek name, I believe it was Agari Aspidae, were a very elite pike unit that became part of the Seleucid Empire, and they were actually went all the way back to Alexander the Great, and they were on par with what we consider the Royal Pikemen, or the Aestheteroi, or Aestheteroi. I sort of can't remember how you pronounce it. My Greek isn't very good, put it that way, but I always kind of was disappointed that the Silver Shield Pikemen have got this small shield that makes them kind of seem a lot more crappier than Royal Pikemen. And Royal Pikemen are pound for pound better too, up in the melee. It's mostly because of the shield though, and it's unfortunate in my opinion, because they should have, in my opinion, be on par. But maybe that was done to balance the Seleucids out, because the Seleucids have got more variety than Macedon, of course with the elephants and stuff, but nobody's allowed to use elephants really in the games in multiplayer, because nobody allows elephants to the games anyway. So that's kind of just me talking about that there. Anyway, obviously we've got a Germania opponent, so we'll try and direct Germania into a pike, preferably into Macedon on the front if possible. And what we want to try and do is get our... what we want to try and do here is either get plenty of missile fire down into Germania, or combine cavalry strike from as many of our cav as possible with my cataphracts and the companion cavalry. Now, the reason we want to do it with those two, more so than the Praetorian cavalry, is not that the Praetorian cavalry are bad for it, because the Praetorian cavalry will still thrash them. It's because the enormous charge impact that both companions and cataphracts have, with a 9 charge and lots of weight on their charge. So they really do a number on Germania if they get a full charge into Germania, because Germania has no armour, of course, so it does a ton load of damage. It's quite easy to cause a mass rout, even with berserkers and stuff there. If they manage to get like a stationary charge against us, though, it's really bad for us. So what I'm going to try and do in this fight with my infantry side of things is just build up Mo and Hades as much as possible. I really don't want my infantry to engage unnecessarily. I mean, they do have, in theory, an infantry advantage here, but because the way Germania works, you have to be more cautious in your approach of employing it. So it's not a big deal. Like myself, I'm going to hold back and play a supporting role with the Seleucid infantry, and Germania is going to hold back and wait for the moment of opportunity, because that's how Germania works. So it really just means for probably at least half the battle, you're only going to see Hades-Scipii Romans, Mo's Macedonians versus Odin's Brutii and THOR-Julii, and the Germania is going to wait for a golden opportunity, and I'll try and back up and support where I can, and we'll try and use our missiles and cavalry to get the opening, because that's really our best strength. We have a cavalry supremacy and advantage here, and that's where we need to use it, and I do believe we've got missile superiority. So that's another thing. Our opponents have not brought missile units, and I generally would not recommend not bringing missile units, especially if you're facing Macedon and Germania. If you're gonna Germania like on one team and Macedon on the other, you need missiles, because you know the Macedonian player is going to bring Cretan archers, and because it's a pike faction, Macedon will probably shadow you, make it hard for Germania to find an opening. And while Germania is trying to find an opening, they'll be getting shot. So you really need to bring missile units in that scenario. Now, if it's purely like 3 roams, you could go without any missile units on one team, but you'd need to be very rush orientated, and at the moment these guys look like they want to play a defensive role, which is in fact in the favour of our team, because Mo's got 3 archers, I've got 4 archers, gives us 7 archers, and they've got no archers to fire back at us, so we can use our archers on Germania, we can use it on the Cav, most likely we'll go for Germania of course, but the point is they have no real cover protection for Germania's weakness, so it means Germania is going to have to hold back and play an even more delayed action, which is going to be good because we'll just be able to shoot him up while he's doing that, hopefully, or he'll have to stay out of the battle, and we might be able to create an opportunity against one of the Romans before he can support, which is good. So as you can see here, I've got my Pikes in the back as a reserve unit, and I'm going to probably reserve them for support for Hades, just in case he gets mass cav charged or anything like that. He possibly could. And I'm also going to use my Silver Shield Legionnaires to try and back our cavalry attacks as well. Me and Mo are going to make a flanking action with our archers on this side, so I'm taking my cataphracts this way for support there, and my archers are going this way with Mo, and we're going to try and get some flank shots on units here, try and maybe get Germania if the opening becomes available, shoot the cav. As stated, I'll try and shoot as much, and I'll try and use my archers as more of the meat shield layer in case there's an situation where they might get charged and it might not be easy to get them away. Then it's best my archers take the brunt of the blow so that the Cretans have time to escape, because Cretans are more useful bear archer unit. So that's what we're doing here, but I brought my cavalry up. Now I'm going to get a lot closer with these archers due to their shorter range, but again they're going to be useful because they're going to be able to fire fire arrows, and it's going to lower their morale, which is going to be good, because especially if we get like Germania, maybe shoot them up a bit and then lower their morale a bit, and then get a nice combined charge with these cataphracts and companion cavalry. It should master out Germania pretty quickly. If we go on to the other side here, we're just moving in steadily here, and these guys are very adamantly taking a defensive role, and I think this is wrong on their part. They do have infantry advantage in theory, really, because I'm using the Seleucids, and Seleucid infantry is very outclassed, so they do have the infantry advantage with the 2 Roman players here, because one Rome for one Rome and then one Rome for Macedon here, and they should have the infantry advantage there. And if they use Germania correctly, they do definitely have the infantry advantage, but we have the cavalry advantage. So I think they need to get aggressive here, because otherwise our missile units are indeed going to own them. So they can't be too defensive here. That's the thing. If the enemy's got missile supremacy and you just let them shoot you for a decent amount of time, then that's really not a good idea. You really need to be more aggressive there and try and take that missile advantage away, or make use of, like we've got 7 missiles, which means 7 of our unit, they've got 7 more either infantry or cavalry units than us. In this case it's infantry. They've got 7 more infantry than we do. So that's an advantage. They have that infantry advantage there. They need to try and make use of that infantry advantage and nullify the archer advantage. If they sit around and let us even the playing field and without taking any damage to our archers, then it's just going to play into our strengths. So here I see that, Thor has moved his guys forward. He's peeling these guys, but he's all hitting the peeler screen here, so it's not really a big deal for Mo. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring my archers forward, and I'm going to target the back of these guys here. And I think Mo is probably doing the same thing. Over here, as you can see, we decide to make a quick charge against these urban cohorts, and we get 4 of them here, but we need to quickly get out of here before this massive cavalry comes in. I got a little too close here, as you can see. I got too close, and I'm going to get charged here. Gothic Cav's good cav, but Cataphracts can hold out. But I need to get out of this because I'm going to get overwhelmed. And my general's in here too. Losing him now would not be good for me. So I thought about taking the engagement here, and to be honest, I could take out these Gothic Cav, but then I see the Berserkers come in, I see how close Odin's Cav is, and I decide, no, this is not a good engagement. I have to get out. But the good thing about this, if I get these Cataphracts back, you'll notice one of these Berserkers went on berserk mode basically. So unfortunately this unit, I mismicroed it, it got stuck, so it's going to rout, but I managed to extract 5 of them perfectly. These guys overextend a bit here. Mo's probably going to get hit here, but they've got so many cav in the vicinity, so that was a wee bit of a muck up there, probably on my part because I overextended here. So Mo's going to lose his guys here, and I made a few more micro mistakes trying to disengage my cavalry here. But I'm going to pull back anyway. Mo's going to cut for a counter here. These guys are really pushing hard here, but good move here. You see Hades. See how this is good counter action on the battlefield. We're getting really pressed over here, which is a smart move because they take our cavalry advantage away, our missile advantage away, then all their advantages are in their hands, which is a smart move by Odin and Thor and Cornovii here, but Hades is being active here, and look at this, he's going to get a nice charge at this rate into the back of Germania. Nothing to cover them. Germania's got huge weakness to cavalry, and this is a really smart move. So you see what Hades is doing, he's like counteracting a move on the opposite wing to try and keep the balance in our favour. This is a good move, and he's pulling it back here. But if we look, we managed to successfully withdraw, although it did cost the Cretan archers, which was in theory my fault because I kind of crapped it badly with my cataphracts. I really wasted them. I played crappy moves with them then, and it kind of cost Mo as missile units. But fortunately I'm going to get my missile units back. It's not ideal. It would have been better if mine were expended, but suffice to say, we still have some missile units. And the cool thing is the berserkers went nuts, which means if we do this right, they should go into these pikes or run further beyond, and I'll be able to shoot them. So we should at least be able to take the berserkers out of this. The loss of probably just one cataphract and some of these archers. And it's not like he didn't lose cavalry taking those cataphracts on as well, so it worked out alright. But if we look over here, Hades is going to get a nice charge into the back here. This is a good charge by Hades. And he sets another Zerker off, which is good. He just needs to get his cavalry out of here now, though, because sticking around, once these Germans have had time to turn around, and Hades needs to get out. And he manages to do so pretty well, and this has been a good charge because it's messed up quite a few of these Germans, and now all the berserkers are gone mad, so that's great. They've gone mad in all the wrong places. As you can see, this is great. Look at this, they run straight into the front of the pikes, the worst place for berserkers, and I'm going to be able to start shooting them in a minute, although I think I start off with the cav units here, but I should have shot the berserkers, but I figured they're on the front of the pikes, it'd be alright. But Mo has to be a wee bit careful just because sometimes Germania can still cause mass routs even on the front of pikes like that, but it should be okay. On this side, Hades is pushing up here, so what I'm doing is I'm just keeping because Hades lost a bit of cav in that action against Germania, but what I'm doing here is I'm bringing up my my units of pikes just to screen him here, and Hades makes a nice move. He's going to take down these berserkers pretty well here as well, and I'm going to keep, because Hades' cav's been pretty badly depleted. He needs to be careful about how he makes these charges against Germania now, because he did lose quite a few, although he should get a nice sandwich move here, although he must have made a micro error here because these guys are walking, and he loses another cav there, so you do need to be careful. You don't want to be flippant about your charges there, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring just pause it again because I just want to show you some things. I'm going to use my Silver Shield Legionaries to constantly accompany these Praetorian cav, just to give them that little bit extra weight and numbers, because Hades has taken a few losses, and I should be able to get some Peeler into these guys. Germania will take lots of damage from Peeler, so it's a good position for me to be in. I do need to be careful of any berserkers here, but the berserkers are gone, I think. On this flank, we're just going to collapse it inwards again, see if we can draw this cavalry away. Thor is coming in for a counter here, which is pretty solid because these guys are kind of a bit flimsy, but these Germania units are taking a pretty big beating, and I'm just going to let my guys go to auto here. I'd normally manual this, but I'm going to absolutely plaster these Germania guys with men here, and I'm going to put my pikes in here just to screen them out again. I'm pretty confident that without the berserkers, my pikemen will be safe against these guys, so that's okay, but I'm a little bit worried. I'm going to have to fall back here because Thor's got my flank, and if Thor gets my flank like this, I'm going to lose it badly with Germania, with the Seleucids rather. So we've brought more cavalry this way, and I'm going to kind of use my pikes to screen it out, but at this stage, as you can see, because of that attack with my Peeler there and Hades' cav, it pretty much mass routs a good portion of the Germania army. So Germania hasn't done very well at this stage. And I'm using my pikes just to screen them out. So as you can see, Thor's trying to make a charge at Hades here, but I'm going to just be able to intercept this with my Silver Shield pikemen and blunt it completely. And Hades and myself are going to dump as much Peeler as we can into Thor's cav, which drives him away. And through here, as you can see, Mo's held exceptionally well against Odin's attack. I think Odin was trying to walk his men through, so he took a real weight, got really wasted by these raw pikemen. All the while this has been happening, I've been putting down fire arrows and regular arrows into their cavalry, and into these German units here. You can see this, look, it's Chosen Axemen, Naked Fanatics. They've been getting absolutely ripped up by my cheap archers here, which is good. So we'll be going in for a cavalry strike very soon, as soon as we can in a moment. You also may be wondering why I'm not using wedge formation with my cataphracts. it's somewhat easier to control cataphracts when they're not in wedge formation. Wedge formation is great though because you've got the 9 impact charge, but they can be very tricky to disengage in battles, and I find it's easier to disengage them in regular formation. And you still get plenty of charge with them anyway, although it is more ideal if you can use the wedge formation. Over here we can see that Odin's trying to make a cav strike on the back of Mo's pikes, but Mo swings things around. He's going to pin these guys pretty badly, and at this stage Mo's lifted his pikes here, and we're going to go through an all-out charge up through the centre against these testudoed Roman infantry here, and try and sandwich them as much as we can. Mo's going to turn his pikes on them. They're in testudo, they will hold for a time, but as you can see, Hades and myself are sort of starting to push this flank over here pretty aggressively. Got legions up here, and as you can see, start get a few routes, get this Julii general in a minute. Got most of them routing here. Mo's going to come around, but my cataphracts nail the rest of these guys from the centre here with their maces, and myself and Hades just going to push through around here, and as you can see, most of the Julii are starting to rout. Mo's going to come around from the flank here, reorganise his pikes. My cataphracts, I've pulled them back out. I'm going to wait for another opportunity here, but we're really going to pour on the infantry here. Most of their guys are mass routed, and this fire arrow is coming in constantly lowering their morale. Here Odin tries making a cav strike, but I'm going to get my pikes down here, block him. At least I think I did. I should. Actually no, I left them up because I wanted to countercharge with my cav because I knew that Mo was behind. So I countercharged my cav, and then Mo comes in the back and it routs pretty much all their army here. These German troops are going to rout as well. Fire arrow is still coming in. So a really nice game here. Some interesting factions. Germania, we have the Seleucids. It kind of mixes up a bit, and I rather enjoyed this game. And again, I probably wouldn't take the Seleucids with any allies, but when I'm with Mo and Hades, some of the best players on Rome Total War 31k, I'm pretty confident to go ahead and choose them. And I do like them, but they're very specific in their use, in my opinion. Their infantry is very vulnerable. You have to be very careful with their use. You can't just guns blazing with their infantry because they're not strong enough. Their morale's just not high enough. But they're kind of a versatile faction in that they've got quite a few options. Good cavalry options with the cataphracts. They've got archers, but they're not very good archers, but they had their uses. They worked out well in this battle, but they don't always work out well. The Silver Shield Legionnaires, they're not as all-round effective as the Silver Shield Pikemen, but they do have Testudo, they do have Pila, and they worked out well against Germania here because I was able to dump Pila into them and support Hades' Cav. And I do like them from that perspective. That they're a really nice sort of faction for building up the other factions around you. I like that. So we have a heroic victory here. It's been a while since I've had one of the heroics, so it was nice to load one up here. So I haven't quite clocked 1,000 kills, but if we look here, I've lost less than 300 men. So I've lost only about 270 men. So I was pretty pleased with that. 270 men losses for nearly 1,000 kills. I think that's a pretty good run for the Seleucids, to be honest. At least in my hands. I'm sure other players could do better than that, but it's pretty good in my hands for me to be able to do that because they are a difficult faction to use, for sure. I don't think, like, looking at the enemy team, I don't think they played it as well as they could have. They should have been more aggressive. They shouldn't have allowed our missile units to shoot them up. They did get aggressive, and they did make a good move to try and... I think the only time I think the enemy team did a good move was on that right wing there, or when me and Mo's left, where we had our missile units, our cav, and they tried to neutralise both. It would have been better had they put Germania gone all out on that flank and gone round the side of Macedon while Odin put the pressure on the front, and it could have very well worked out nicely for them. They would have had to be very careful for counter cav charges, but if they'd amassed their cav correctly, I think they could have and mixed it with Germania, I think they could have stopped us from being able to do so. I think that was where they made a good move, but they didn't follow it up. And then basically, Hades made some good moves with his cav there, although he lost quite a lot of them doing so. It disrupted Germania and made it very difficult for Cornovii to back up, and it kind of counteracted the action that was happening out against me and Mo, and he put the pressure on the opposite flank there, and it's a good move because it kind of counteracted what was happening on the battlefield. As you can see, Mo's come out with very nice kills, 1,707, and he's still got good nearly 1,000 men left, so he played very well in this battle indeed. So if we look at the stats here, these cataphracts have done pretty well, to be honest. Even the one that got caught out, I believe, and destroyed, still got like 40, 50 kills, so it worked out pretty well. They did pretty well indeed, to be honest. The Silver Shield Legionnaires, they were useful in this fight, 50s, 20s, 30s, most of this from Peeler damage against Germania. It's a useful unit. It's not very good. They're not very, facing Rome, the only thing they're good for is just Testudo. They're just crap within Peeler duels and stuff. But they're good for Testudo and good for delay. And if you back them, I think if you can put them in with some cavalry, they're quite useful there. The Pikes, they got that nice snag on. They managed to snag Thor's cavalry, which worked out nice. The Silver Shield Pikemen are extremely vulnerable to missiles, but there weren't any missiles on the enemy team, so it wasn't a big threat to me in this particular battle. So that wasn't a big deal, but they're useful too, though. You can use them to block cavs, support allies, have a pike line. They're a useful unit indeed, but they have got some pretty significant vulnerabilities too. And these archers, these worked out very well in this fight, 64, 57, 69, 44, with virtually no losses. That's pretty good for Seleucid archers, which are not very good archers. They were really useful for lowering morale. They picked away at some German infantry units. They picked away at some enemy cav with their fire arrows. They were very good in this fight, but it's always a bit of a risk using those units because they're not particularly good, but they worked out well here, I felt. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it. It was a really fun game. I thought we played well on our team. Our opponents made some good moves there, but they were unable to capitalise on it. And I don't think they followed it up very well. But everyone makes mistakes. I've made my fair share, of course, in games. But this was a really good one. I enjoyed playing it. Awesome teamwork from Hades and Mohammed there. I thoroughly enjoyed it. So hopefully you guys liked it. Please leave comments. Tell me what you think. It's always great to hear the feedback. So thanks again, guys, and I'll see you soon next time.